So as much as I would love to kick this course off with an exciting topic, unfortunately, when it comes to databases, you kind of have to have your vegetables before you can have dessert. And for us, that means installing stuff. We really have 3 installations to get through. The first is of SQL Server Express 2019, which is the database server. This is where the database will live. This is kind of the foundation that everything else is going to build on. The next is SQL Server Management Studio, which is a graphical user interface for interacting with a database. This is where we're going to be doing most of our coding. This is where we're going to be doing most of the work that we'll be doing in the course. All the exercises you'll be doing that involve writing code against the database. And then lastly, we'll be installing a sample database that's provided by Microsoft, which is meant to be representative of the types of databases that data analysts work with every day. The data in the database pertains to a fictional company called AdventureWorks, but again, it's designed in such a way as to be similar to databases that you might work with in your job every day, or the job that you're going for. So one brief disclaimer before we get to installing. You will need Windows 10 to install SQL Server Express 2019. If you have an older version of Windows, look into installing an older version of SQL Server Express. There are several versions that go back, so if you have, say, Windows 8, you could look into installing SQL Server Express 2016 or 2017 instead. One other note, I'm going to try to walk through this installation following the same steps that you would. I'm going to try to not skip a lot of things, so I'm even going to start out just Googling install SQL Express 2019 because that's pretty much what you would do if you were installing this completely on your own, unguided. So I'm going to try to simulate the process of just kind of walking through this from step 1. So that's exactly where we'll begin. Now, one final disclaimer. We all have Windows machines because you need a Windows machine to install SQL Server, but Windows machines tend to be a little different. Even if we're all working with Windows 10, there are differences in the interface, the screens from machine to machine. So what you're seeing on your machine may not be identical to what you see on my machine. Don't panic if that's the case. The steps should still be similar, but they may not be exactly the same. So just want to let you know that in case you see something that's just a little different on my machine than yours. So without further ado, let's get started. So I started off with Googling SQL Server Express 2019. And the first link you see here is from a site called SQL Shack. I'm sure they're a very reputable outfit, but I'm going to go with the link from Microsoft, SQL Server Downloads. If that will return. All right, so now it's giving me an option of several different databases that I could download. Now, we want the free version. Free is good. The ones that are not free are, not only are they not free, they're somewhat expensive. So our 2 options are SQL Server Developer Edition, which, as it says here, is a full-featured free edition licensed for use as a development and test database in a non-production environment. What this means is you can play around with it on your computer, but if you wanted to make it a part of some product that perhaps would make some money, that is not allowed. On the other hand, you have SQL Server 2019 Express, which is also a free edition of SQL Server, which can be used in production applications. Now, it's not going to have every single feature that Developer Edition is, but it's going to have all that we'll need to learn the basics and even some advanced features of SQL as we go through the course. So we're going to go ahead and pick this one. So I'll just go ahead and click Download Now. All right, so we have the executable file right here, and I'll click Open File to open it. So clicking the executable should begin the installation wizard, and the first screen you'll see will prompt you to select an installation type. Now, we don't need to worry about download media. You'd only do that if you wanted to download the setup files now and perhaps use them to install SQL Server at some other time or on another device. You could choose custom, but that's only if you don't like the defaults that Microsoft has chosen for the installation process and kind of want to do it your own way. You've got some specific idea for how you want to change the default installation. Well, for now, we're going to trust that Microsoft knows best and go with the basic installation, which has all the defaults that Microsoft recommends that are going to be fine for the vast majority of use cases. So we'll start there. This is the part where they ask you to sell your soul and who knows what else you're agreeing to here, but we're going to go ahead and click accept anyway. What's the worst that could happen? And now it's just going to tell you the install location. Again, you could browse for a different one if you wanted to, but the defaults normally make sense, so we're going to go ahead and go with that. We'll click install. All right, exciting. It looks like SQL Server 2019 Express has successfully installed. So now, the first thing we're going to do is click Connect Now. And this is going to confirm that the installation worked, that we can connect to the database, and move on with our day. So let's go ahead and click that. So after you click Connect Now, a window should pop up that looks much like what you see here. Don't worry about understanding all this crazy looking computer speak. We're going to get into some of this later in the course. The bottom line is, though, you should see that one row's affected at the bottom of the text. That means that the test was successful and we were able to, essentially to connect to and interact with the database. So once you see that, you'll know that your installation has been successful and you can go ahead and close that window. Now that we've installed SQL Server 2019, the next step, as I had mentioned previously, will be to install SQL Server Management Studio, which is that graphical user interface that we'll be utilizing to interact with the database. Now, if you're an astute observer, you may have noticed that little Install SSMS button at the bottom of the dialog box. And if you have great deductive reasoning skills, you may have concluded that that actually means to install SQL Server Management Studio. If so, you would be correct, but we're going to hold off on clicking that button until next time. We've already tackled quite a bit so far, so stay right there, and I will see you in the next video.